Okay, we've got Ken Johnson here with us today. Hi, Ken.
Hi, how you doing, Heidi?
Good. How you?
Well, I'm doing much better today, thank you.
Okay, so how did you hear about the Mars One project?
Well, that's kind of interesting because, um, oh, with my background in history, I'd totally pretty well given up on it, and as age starts catching up with people, and then, but the way the story, the real story goes is we get up every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is crazy, but have to do that. I cook breakfast, put my wife, go down, put her on the train. She goes 100 miles north to Santa Fe. Any rate, on the ride up to Santa Fe, she's got her iPad out, and she comes up with a notice about this company out of the Netherlands looking for people to become astronauts and go to Mars to colonize Mars going one way. So she calls me on the phone just as quick as she can. She says, there's this company who wants to have people that are astronauts. You've got the experience, and this is August 26th. You have until the 31st to get your application and a video submitted if you really want to go. Oh, I just jumped into it and got my friend to help me do the video and got it all submitted on the 30th. Then, we were all supposed to be notified on December 31st that we made it into round one, I guess. And the 31st came, I didn't get an email. January the 1st came, no email. 2nd came, no email. 3rd, January 3rd, I figured, okay, I know what happens. At least I hope I know what happens. And because my last name is Johnston with a T in it, and in the Marine Corps and military and everywhere I've been, invariably people say, oh, that's Ken Johnson, and they spell it S-O-N and they file it in the wrong place. So I sent Dr. Kraft an email and asked him, I said, now, if I'm not in the selection, I can understand, I can accept that. But is there a possibility, and I explained the thing about the T, sent him the email, and within about 2 hours I got a response back from him that says, you are definitely in round one. So that's how I heard about it.
Awesome. So, what does your wife think about you going to Mars one way?
Well, I've been asked that question on interviews on the television and on the radio, and my response is, well, going one way. My wife's the one that signed me up. In reality, it really that's kind of true because if she hadn't told me about it, I would have never known.
Right. So, how many children do you have, and what do they think about you going to Mars?
Well, between my wife and I, we had 5 children. She had 2, and my first go around with marriage, we had 3. And right now we have 18 grandchildren and 2 great grandchildren. So as far as what they are so excited about it. My son, Ken Johnston Jr., we lost his brother was killed. Anyway, so I asked him. He called me and he said, he says, I think this is very exciting, but the day that they push the button and you launch, he says, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it then, but until then, you've got my 100% support.
Awesome. So, tell us about your earlier astronaut experience.
Well, gosh, this goes back way back for some people that were they what they learned in history books is what I was involved in doing. When I got out of the Marine Corps in I guess it was October of 1966, I wound up going to work out at NASA at the Johnson Space Center. It was the Manned Spacecraft Center back in those days, and I was hired by the Grumman Corporation that built the lunar module, and I became one of the first 4 civilian astronaut consultant pilots. So that was even before they really had the civilian astronauts, but that's what we were called. Our job was to test the lunar module in the vacuum chambers and test the suits and test the equipment, test the environmental control systems. And anytime one of the regular astronauts came into the lunar module, we were responsible to helping train them how to fly the lunar module and go to the moon. So that's kind of. And then there was at NASA they have what they call the test subjects pool, a group of people that are willing to stand in for the astronauts and be guinea pigs in reality. And I did a lot of stuff in there in vacuum chambers and centrifuges and wearing spacesuits until one particular day I wore a spacesuit for almost 8 hours and I actually lost I guess it was 6 hours. I lost about 8 pounds of perspiration, but and it's been exciting. I look back now with the fact that I've been posting pictures and it's popular request. Friends of mine that have asked me to post the pictures so they don't get lost in history, and I've been posting them on the Mars One Club and a special folder, so they go there. There's over 170 some odd pictures about the testing, things we did, and information like that. So the information's out there. It's a lot of history. And like you asked my past experience, once we landed on the moon and the Apollo was winding down, I applied for the regular NASA astronaut program. I have letters from Neil Armstrong signed by him, and Jack Schweikert and Jim Irwin and a couple of the others. And I submitted that NASA put out the call for new astronauts, and the guy said, yeah, you'll make it no problem. Well, the week before they were supposed to make the announcement of who the next 26 astronauts, I was called into astronaut Vance Brandt's office. He was in charge of the selection program committee. He says, come in, sit down, Ken. I'm excited because I'm thinking next week they're going to announce it. I'm going to be one of the astronauts. Well, he says, we know you can do the job. You've been doing it with us. But he says, the government's gotten involved. And I joke and say, you know what happens when the government gets involved in stuff? They didn't want to have jet jocks. They wanted to have PhD scientists. And he says, so your name's been cut from the list. Well, wow. There I was. I thought I had everything that they needed, but then I didn't have a doctorate degree. And so I was cut from the program, didn't get to become a regular astronaut. 10 years later, when I got my first doctorate, I applied for the shuttle astronaut program. And would you believe it? They said, you're too old. Now, we know that John Glenn was 77 when he went into space the last time in the shuttle. But and he proved it's not your chronological age, it's your physiological and your psychological age that makes a difference. And I'm glad to see that Mars One is seriously looking at people from 18 to 80, because if they're 80, they're going to be 90 before we launch. But so I'm actually the oldest Mars One astronaut applicant still in the selection process.
Awesome. What are you doing to spread the word to the world about Mars One and our mission to colonize Mars?
Well, I guess I have a little advantage there because I was one of the with NASA and the JPL as a solar system ambassador for 5 years, and so I had a lot of experience in going around to clubs, organizations, schools, you name it, giving lectures and talks about what we've been doing in space and what our next program is going to be. So I just picked up with what I was doing there, no longer with them, of course, but then on my own. I got invited to go to Switzerland. In fact, that I was the only the applicant that was invited to be a speaker at the Switzerland's Astronaut Night, as they called it, and that was exciting. I got to be there with Dr. Kraft and Bas Lansdorp and James Cass and all of those folks. We spent several days together. So my wife says, "Wow, you are the people that making all the decisions. You really make an impression one way or the other." So it was either good or bad, the impressions. At any rate, I'm still in the mix. So we'll hope it keeps moving right along.
Awesome. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, as far as you did ask the question what I'm doing. Okay, I've been on the Coast to Coast AM radio a couple of times. I'm due to be on again next week, I believe. I've got to check and see. And there are over 20 million people listen to that. And I've been to so many schools and places. We did a number calculation, and there's over 122 million people now know of my name and know who I am. I've been involved in that. You might know, you'd always get a phone call. Let me turn this thing off or down. There we go. So anyway, and I'm still doing that. I'm got a good friend who's a professional photographer, and he does all of the photography for the sports and for the school's yearbooks and things. And when he calls me and he says, "By the way, Ken," he says, I think I did it to you again. I said, "What?" He says, I booked you to come and talk to the school over here in Grand Canyon or you name it. So I'm having a lot of fun.
I bet. That's all I've got. Thanks, Ken.
You're sure welcome. I'm looking forward. Now, how will we know when you're this is going up on YouTube?
Yes, it is.
And what, today, tomorrow, next year?
I think I can get it up today.